The Oddball Show, a podcasting collaboration of Tribune Productions and Oddball magazine.
From city to town and coast to coast to the poets, painters, and all the ships at sea, welcome. This is indeed the Oddball Show. My name is Prof, your friendly neighborhood hip-hop representative, and it couldn't be the Oddball Hour without the founder and editor-in-chief of Oddball magazine, the master of metric metaphor, Mr. Jason Wright.
Hey, Prof, what's going on, man? How you doing this fine Saturday morning?
It is a Saturday morning here. It's for our guest, who we'll talk about in just a moment. It's a very, very different time of day. So good morning to you, and good evening to our friend Rokus. Let's just jump right into it. We have a very special guest joining us this week, crossing time zones and oceans via the power of the interwebs to land on the other side of your speaker. Rokus Loopik is the curator of the Living Museum, a psychiatric center transformed into an awe-inspiring art asylum. This unique approach to mental health originated in 1983 in Queens, New York, and has since gone international. And now coming to us live from Haarlem in the Netherlands to talk about its history and how artistic expression can be the vessel to a much wider world of mental health. Please welcome Mr. Rokus Loopik.
Good afternoon.
Good morning, Rokus.
Yes. We have a time difference, right?
So the time difference between Netherlands and here is about 6 hours. So
6 hours.
For our friend Rokus here, it's approaching the evening. It's late afternoon, approaching evening.
I'm always almost thinking about my Saturday afternoon beer, you know.
We would normally all actually be drinking beer for the podcast. So
yes.
That'd be right on.
I'm having coffee this time around.
Yeah. Well, Rokus, really, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your time today. What you do in your work is a topic of dual interest here for us at the podcast: artists and the stories behind their work, and then the evolution of how we understand mental health. So it's really a keen place for us to have you on. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's a big honor.
Let's give our listeners a clear background into what exactly the Living Museum is, how you became involved, and then the connections between your work, where you are, and the original in Queens, that kind of thing, just to put everybody on the same page. Can you tell us a little bit of history about what the Living Museum is? Well,
first of all, it's good to say that I've been working in psychiatry for about 40 years. As a social worker, here in the Netherlands, we call it a social psychiatric nurse. And America has always been a big country of interest for me. I'd been there when I was 19. I traveled around for 8 weeks, all through the States. And so that was kind of the start of my this interest in your country. And when I was the head of the homeless team in Amsterdam, I've done that for about 20 years. Roaming the streets, searching for homeless people with big challenges. One day I decided to go to New York with 5 of my team members. And at the last day of our visit, I bumped into something called Housing First. And this program really changed my life because it's the easiest and cheapest way to solve homelessness. And this is really when my New York, America adventure started, because after that I started organizing study trips to America for peers, professionals, and policymakers. And during the early trips I made, I bumped into the Living Museum in Queens, New York. It was mentioned to me by a friend here in the Netherlands who knew about it. So I called Janos Martin and I asked him if I could come by with my group. And when I walked in there, I knew I was in a special place. It's a place I've never seen anywhere in the world. It's totally packed with art made by people with a psychiatric background. And, Janos Martin he's a special guy. He has special theories about psychiatry and about mental illness, about art. And, over the last 10 years, I really got to know him. And it became one of my profound wishes to open a program like that in the Netherlands. And I begged people and companies here in the Netherlands for years and years to offer me a building to make it possible to start a program like that. And it took me 3 years, to be quite honest, to find somebody who was into it. And in fact, that was a psychiatrist from a mental health institute not far from this city in Haarlem. She joined my trip. I took her to the Living Museum. It stole her heart. We came back and she offered me an audition with the CEO of this mental health organization. And the CEO gave me an hour. And in this hour, I gave my best to let her know what the Living Museum is all about. And then at the end of the conversation, she asked me, okay, now I know what it's about, but how are you going to do it? And I said, well, it's pretty easy, because if you offer me a building, how about opening the door? She laughed and she said, okay, I'm going to take this risk and I'm going to allow you to use one of our buildings to open up your Living Museum. And that is about 2.5 years ago. And and I got 4 big spaces, which were empty back in the days, but nowadays, I'm growing out of the building because there's art everywhere. I have about 40 to 50 people coming in every week to come and make beautiful art.
That's amazing. 40 to 50 people every week just in and out of the gallery.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. And it's like Housing First. I'm a lucky guy because all through my life I was lucky enough to meet the right people who would help me along to not only become the person who I want to be, but also help me out with creating programs that really make a difference in mental health, which are total contrary to the traditional medical model, And I was trained in that traditional medical model, and it's not that I hated it, because if I would have to do it all over again, I would do it again. But I did feel unhappy with the way we treated people in psychiatry back in the days. That was horrible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, Rokus, the language changing around mental health and how we speak about people with mental health in the industry?
Oh yes. There a lot of things are changing. It depends on which country you go, because I also train teams in countries like Moldova, Croatia, Montenegro, and Romania.
Wow.
And they are way back on developments, because there's a lot of poverty going on, and because of this poverty, they don't have the resources and the knowledge to change their system just yet. But we're teaching them, and obviously in countries where they have money enough and resources enough, things are developing much faster than in these countries. But in our country, in Europe, in America, I notice that things are changing rapidly, and one of the big reasons for that is that nowadays we offer people with lived experience positions within mental health, and we give them an opportunity to have a voice, to talk out about their experiences and what they think should change in mental health. And of course we also learn that besides medication and involuntarily admissions, there are a lot of ways to offer people different kinds of treatment that are less harmful and less traumatizing for people. So I think we're fortunate to live in these times, although I must say there's a lot of work to do, because there's stigma still all around. There's self-stigma around,
So self-stigma, right?
Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick, Jason? Because that's really interesting. This is the second guest that we really hit on. The importance of, medication can be helpful, admission can be helpful to certain facilities, but the evolution seems to be, and you are more familiar with this than I am, obviously, that that medication is not the answer, and there are so many other different options, and exploring those kind of different options is really the future of mental health, it seems. Rokus, do you see? I know that you said financial was an obstacle to getting the museum open, but do you see a resistance towards that kind of new thinking, or do you find people are open to that?
Well, you know, I became almost 60, and I stopped accusing other people for fucking up things. Sorry for my words, but
that's
we're on the internet. Say it on.
so I've never met a person who works in psychiatry who was born with a single mission to make people's lives miserable. So, you know, every director or CEO or manager or nurse or peer, they do the work with their heart.
Yeah.
The only thing is that that some people have convictions that don't allow them to look further than what they've learned at university or at school. So, you know, I think that we can learn a lot from people with lived experience. We should listen to them more because they will lead us to a different kind of way of treatment for people with mental illness. We all know that the medical model, you know, I have to say, if I would become psychotic today, I would take medication, to be quite honest. But I also know that this medication is not healthy, you know.
Yes.
It will battle your psychosis, but on the other end, it will
destroy your body.
It's going to fuck up your brain, right?
Right. Yeah.
In a physiological way, right? A physical way, I mean. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a choice between bad choices, and we all know that nowadays we develop methods that are much healthier than using medication. You know, there are people in the north of Finland who invented the method of open dialogue, and they will lead people through a psychosis by doing intensive treatment, intensive dialogues with the system and the client, and they will go through their psychosis without using medication. And there are people in Boston like Daniel Fisher who are trained to do this. So, you know, and this is one alternative way of dealing with people with psychosis, and it's proven that it works. So
that's great that you bring that up, because I just finished reading the Harm Reduction Guide to Coming Off of Psychiatric Medications by William Hall, and he also wrote another book recently that just came out that is actually I work for a pretty, I would say a pretty great company, and I bring in resources for them all the time because I'm a certified peer specialist there.
Good.
And I gave them this book. It's a free PDF by Will Hawley you can get online of all these different stories of people with mental health conditions and how they're surviving. But what I found interesting was the Harm Reduction Guide to Coming Off of Psych Meds, and how I feel that coupled with good mental health work, you know, with the absence of medication is a good theory to test for people who want to go off of medication. And I think that's I don't know. What do you think about this?
I took this book from the Alternatives. It's in my room upstairs. I still have to read it, but I was very interested. And recently, I don't know if you saw. Did you see the movie Crazy Wise?
You know, actually, we're gonna actually watch that next time all our peers get together. I heard it was fantastic. Sundance movie, right?
It's amazing. A movie made by Phil Borges.
Yeah.
And I had it programmed in my living museum just a week ago.
Okay.
And it's the first time I saw it, I was totally overwhelmed by it, because it shows us that there are different ways to deal with severe mental illness, or whatever you want to call it. You know, we could also use other words for all these psychiatric terms, right?
That's actually what I've been doing. I've been doing these language conversations, Rokus, at my work.
Yeah.
At Riverside Community Care in Boston, and I've been doing these language conversations through the Congress sites about removing deficit-based language when you're speaking about people with mental health conditions, because disorders and illnesses isn't helping anybody to
No.
recover and feel empowered. You know?
I try to teach people here too. Every training I ask them, give me some other words for hopeless, or
Yeah.
give me some other words for manic, or give me some other words for antisocial. And it's really funny because people come up with beautiful words, you know,
Yeah.
to positive words to, like, for instance, antisocial could be this person is starting to learn to think for himself, which is
Yeah.
much nicer, right?
Yeah, if you take away the stigmatizing language from like even bipolar disorder or manic episode and just say someone's has had ups and downs in the past, because really basically what you have and what people live by is their diagnosis that was given them 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
they live by that diagnosis of who they are now is defined by their diagnosis. And
yeah.
at my work, I'm trying to, as a peer specialist, I'm trying to empower people to think beyond their diagnosis.
Right. And if you're going back to your first question, what do you think things are changing? I'm saying yes, but and I'm sorry to say but, because I don't like the word, because in fact you say no, right? But there are still a lot of things to change, because most people that I meet within these psychiatric facilities, they still use these words. They still use the diagnosis. They still re-traumatize people. And it's going to take us probably another 10 to 20 years to really cut out the bullshit, cut out these terms that people use, because, when you keep on using them, you're having different conversations with people. If you tell a person who's manic that he has high expectations of himself and that you're interested in what these expectations are, you have a different conversation, right?
That's an absolutely beautiful way to describe that. Yeah.
This person will probably talk to you because he or she can see and hear you're interested 100%. But if you tell a person, listen, you're going through a manic episode, you're going to scare the hell out of these people, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And because first, they don't know what it means. Second, they have this person at the other end of the table who is like stigmatizing you. And not only that, it feels like a sentence, right? When people use these terms. So we still re-traumatize people by taking them to facilities that I wouldn't leave my dog in a psychiatric ward for 5 minutes, right?
No, absolutely not. No.
I love my dog Joe, and I would never leave him there. He's my dog Joe is our social worker here at home. Whenever my wife starts yelling at me, he starts to bark.
I love that.
Yeah. He's a good a parameter for your marriage, but
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually Rokus. That's funny you should say that. I'm gonna be applying to be a dog owner, so I can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I really want to get a dog. So yeah, it's amazing how great dogs are. Really, for they're just wonderful.
You're
Wonderful
gonna have
animals.
you're gonna have your own support dog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess.
I take my dog Joe to my living museum, and all the artists love him. He's their support dog. He's very gentle, and he's very sensitive for moods.
Yeah.
So whenever somebody's not feeling well, he will try to comfort this person.
Rokus, let me ask you a question. How do you
Yeah.
feel that the Living Museum is empowering the people who are, the artists there?
Well, the simplest explanation I can give to you is, and it shocks me every time I hear it, but I have artists who tell me that if the living museum wouldn't be there, they probably would be dead. So, if you have one artist out of the 50 who states that, I know why I'm doing this, and I know why I should go there every day and open the door, right?
Absolutely.
Most people, the Living Museum, my Living Museum has no rules. We have informal rules, but there are no rules on the wall. And I tell people I don't want them, because if we put one rule on the wall, we have to have meetings every week to talk about these rules. So after 30 years of being in traditional mental health care, I'm fed up of these rules. So we're not going to have meetings. We have like an intake conversation of 30 seconds on the threshold of our living museum. When people new come in, I would ask them 2 questions in 30 seconds. And the questions are, do you have a background in psychiatry? Yes or no is good. Are you an artist? Yes or no is also good. Be welcome.
Oh, wow, lovely.
And I tell them, if you yourself have to find out if this is the place for you to be. We will never send you away. So come in, spend a couple of weeks with us and see if it's going to work for you. And for most people, you know, the first weeks are kind of shaky because they come from these wards or they were admitted to wards where the wards are, you know, all rules, right?
All rules. Yeah.
You can't go into the fridge after 7 at night. You have to go to bed at 10. You have to put your lights at 10:30. You have to use medication. You have to obey what the psychiatrist tells you. You have to clean your room. You have to this. You have to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, people should do whatever the staff wants them to do. And in my living museum, there's nobody who's going to tell you what to do. In fact, we're going to give you like a studio and give you the opportunity to make art. And you know, after a couple of weeks, people feel pretty at home. They don't want to go home anymore. You know, it's I have people who rather hang out in my living museum than go home, to be quite honest, which is also out of balance. But you know, it says enough about what the place means to them. And it is, you know, whenever a person wants to paint a wall pink, you know, if he has, how do you say that, consensus with the other artists to do it, well, you do it. It's your place. And this is also what I liked when I met Janos Martin for the first time. He told me, I'm giving these buildings back to the rightful owners, to the people who were tortured in these places for hundreds of years. And I'm going to give them back these buildings because they belong to them. And that is what I tell my artists too. You know, I'm going to give you back the buildings. You are the rightful owners. But it also means that I talk to them about self-stigma because I'm a volunteer too in my living museum. We don't make money. I don't make money. So I have to work like 80 to 100 freaking hours a week to, on the other hand, make some money, to make a living. You know, it's about 60%, 40%. 40% of my time, I do everything for free. With 60% of my time, I make money. So it means I have to work hard. My work in the living museum is totally volunteer. It also means that I'm away a lot because in the 60% I have to make some money. And when I'm away, I tell my artists, listen, it might be a little, you know, shaky for you, but when I'm away, you're in charge. You are the boss in the living museum. And I hope when I come back that, things are like the way I left them. But you run my living museum when I'm not there, and I was sure when I started out doing this that people could do it, and we proved it. You know, we're there for 3 years. There was no incident of aggression. Nothing bad happened. People run the living museum as if it's their own company, and so nobody can tell me that people with a background in mental health are not fit to do this. They're very fit to do it. And I don't sleep one night less when I'm away, or, you know, so it's a piece of cake. People run their own living museum. Give them their responsibility back, and they will act up to it. You know, they see no reason to be aggressive. They see no reason to act out. They see no reason to fuck up the living museum, because for them, it's their home.
Yeah.
There's something invested. I think
Yes.
that's an interesting distinction. It's not just that they have a respect for something that is somebody else's, or that somebody else is letting them use. The investment of themselves and the giving them the responsibility is the key to that. I think
It's
that's
their
really
place. It's their place, you know.
right.
And you know what is good? Because of the fact that we're all volunteers, we never have conversations about money because we have none.
Right. I mean, we all laugh at that, but that takes a very serious obstacle off the table.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true, Prof.
And it's a win-win situation because the building was offered to me by the CEO of this big mental health institute, and she is so happy with my living museum because you know we're a separate foundation, so we don't belong to this mental health organization, but we're on their premises, we're on their terrain. And some of our success is their success, right? Because she took the risk
Right. Yeah.
of giving this building to me, and I took the risk by giving this building back to the rightful owners. And so everybody wins. That's the beautiful part of it. And 4 out of 5 days, we have one big a space in my living museum which outside people can use for meetings, for book presentations, for film viewings, for birthday parties, for dialogue meetings. And so 4 out of 5 days groups use this space. They asked me for a prize list. I said, we don't have any. Whatever you think it's worth, you donate to our living museum. And yeah, and so we've been open for 2 years. Every 4 out of 5 days, there's a group there. And it's a big marketing tool because we've had hundreds and hundreds of people coming to our living museum. When they come to us, like the artists, they don't want to go away at the end of the day because they love it so much. And they go talk to other people and send them to us, you know.
Right.
So it's the living museum. I don't know. There are miracles happening. It's a win-win situation for society, you know. It's cheaper than traditional mental health. You know, that is what I never talk about with the CEO or you know with the health insurance companies. But I make a lot of money for them, you know, because I prevent people from being hospitalized by giving them the opportunity to make art and be sane, you know.
Rokus, sorry. Oh, sorry, Prof. Real quick, Rokus, what would you say? Is there a different atmosphere in the Living Museum in New York than the one in Amsterdam?
Let me before you answer, let me
Yeah.
couple my question
Yeah,
because
good.
pretty much the same vein. Why an art studio? Why art as opposed to any other pursuit? You know, in mental health, you know, dialogue or anything else. Why is art so useful and valuable? And then you know, what's the difference between the two? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think there's a big difference apart from the fact that I think in the Living Museum in New York, it's obvious that Janos runs the museum. So whatever happens, he is the man in charge. And that is a difference from my living museum, but because I try to operate more from the shadow, you know. The biggest compliment my artists can give me is that they feel that I am one of them. You know, I'm not the boss. I'm not. But I listened to Janos very carefully too when I started out because he said to me once, Rokus, whatever happens, every living museum needs a king, somebody who can make difficult decisions if they have to be made. And that is my role too in the Netherlands because, you know, sometimes I'm away for a month and I come back and they have problems that they can't solve themselves. So I help them out. If necessary, I'll take the decisions. And in that way, both living museums are the same. What is very different is that it's, you know, it is an art studio. So
Yeah, so the art's different.
yeah, right. It's a working place. So whenever, sometimes after 3 months, an artist comes to my table and asking me for a conversation. And then the artist sits down and states that, oh, Rokus, I'm so awfully mad, about you. And, it scares the hell out of me. So, oh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Well, they say, I've been here for 3 months, and you never asked me what happened to me in my life. And then I tell them, I apologize for what I'm going to say now, but to be quite honest, I'm not interested. And then they ask, what the hell? Why are you not interested?
Yeah.
So then I explain them, well, listen, originally, I have personal experience too, but I'm also a psychiatric nurse. And when you know psychiatric nurses well, you should know that these people have an undesirable urge to help people. So when you are going to tell me your story, our relationship will change within an hour. Because I will never be able to look at you with the view that I'm looking at you now, with not knowing what happened to you. And when I know what happened, I'm going to take care of you, because this undesirable urge you're going to awaken this urge within me, and whenever I sense that something might be wrong with you, I'm going to ask you about it. And I asked them at the table, did I ask you before how you were doing, if something was wrong? And they say, no, you never did. You were always interested about what kind of art we made in the weekend, or what did we do? Did we watch TV? Did we go to a movie? Or healthy stuff. So I tell them, if you're going to tell me your story, I'm going to talk about it after this. And I don't want to know what happened to you, because I rather talk about your talents. I rather talk about what the latest book is that you read, or the movie, or are you having a relationship? Are you in love with somebody? Do you have a dog or a cat? Or what does your house look like? Like healthy stuff. And I'm going to, not only are you going to awaken this urge in me, but it's going to how do you say that in English? It's going to tell you more about your self-stigma. The more you talk about your problems, the more self-stigma you have.
Right.
And it's time you should change this, And I'm going to offer you, with my living museum, the possibility of getting rid of your self-stigma.
So incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
What I love about it is that you're not just like what I try and do with my work as a peer support specialist, is that and how I try to address the people at Riverside, like the staff, is to not not address what's happened to the person in the past, but see where they're at now and try and empower them moving forward.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to not necessarily dwell on the past, because I think a lot of people who are traumatized in life dwell on the things that have happened to them, and they're so stuck in that moment that they can't move forward.
Well, I would like to correct you for one thing, if
Sure.
that's okay with you.
Of course.
The word dwelling sounds kind of negative to me. To my opinion, everybody has a reason to act in the way they do.
Absolutely.
So for me, there is no sense in judging people on whatever they do. Luckily I became 60, and I achieved this wisdom that whatever people do, they have a good reason for it. Also, with dwelling in their psychiatric symptoms or past or whatever, the thing is that being a good peer, or a good healthcare worker, or a good psychiatrist or a psychologist, is helping people in snapping out of it, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in becoming the person they really want to be.
Yep.
I've never met a person who told me, "Oh, I would like to be this dwelling person,"
Yes, right. Absolutely.
So when they do it, they have a good reason, and it's up to us if we can offer them options to snap out of it. Ways out of this self-stigma.
And
And
Rokus, what I think, sorry to interrupt, but what you do with art and creativity and creating things is one of the best therapies for releasing that trauma, through
yeah,
something,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
um, creating something with it. And I think that's, me being a writer, I've written countless amount of poems on the brink of, extreme anxiety, and
hmm,
that's the kind of thing that's like helped me through, So,
yeah,
um,
yeah. I have a beautiful poem from. I have one of my favorite poets is David White from Ireland, and you should look up this poem once. It's called "Everything Is Waiting for You," and it's really beautiful. It is about what we're talking about now. It's really nice.
hey, I will absolutely look that up.
And we'll put it right in our, we'll find a link to it and we'll put it right in our pertinent link section, along with any other things that we come across in
Good.
our
Yeah.
conversation
Put
that
it in
we've.
there. Everything is waiting for you. David White.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about our show is we would really like, we're very glad for our listeners to come and hear this conversation. We would really like for all of them to go out and check out on their own. There's a lot of videos of the origin of the Living Museum, but all of
Yeah.
all the stuff that we're talking about, we like to try to provide links on the website
Oh
to
yeah.
continue this conversation.
There are beautiful documentaries made, and I can't tell people enough because a lot of healthcare workers too. They send me messages through social media every week telling me, Rokus, could I have a conversation with you one time because I feel unhappy within the institute where I work now. I feel as hospitalized as the patients here, and I really want to to make a difference. And can I talk to you? And it's costing me hours to talk to these people, but I never say no. And going to the Living Museum or checking out what Housing First is, or checking out what Open Dialogue is, checking out what emotional CPR from Daniel Fisher is, it will lead the way. It will lead the way to happiness, also as a healthcare worker, because up till now psychiatry has been, it's like we're talking about hell, right? And when we should change it in talking about heaven, because I'm not going to over romanticize having a psychiatric problem. I'm never going to do that, but I think that that most people who are suffering from a psychiatric background, they are special people. They are more sensitive than other people. They have more feeling for art, more feeling for music, more feeling for written words. They have more feeling for being helpful to another person than people who don't have it. And so in some ways, it's also a gift. It could, I have friends who went through a psychosis, who were very successful, making a lot of money before they became psychotic. But they tell me now, Rokus, I will never go back to my former life before I had the psychosis, because the life I gained afterwards is a more meaningful life. I have meaningful conversations with people every day. The work that I do as a peer is more meaningful to me.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Again, I don't want to romanticize having a psychiatric disorder, but a lot of people have found a way as survivors to give their life more meaning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it actually has struck me before as we've had this conversation that you obviously both are within that area, but listening to it from the outside, as you talk about reducing stigma and changing language, that it seems the old way ignored a whole range of experience, which is never a good idea. The folks who are going through some kind of, as you say, psychotic episode or have a mental health condition, that's a range of experience that, rather than shutting it off with medication or just closing it and saying you will that you will manage that section of yourself. Somehow opening and exploring it seems all the better for both them and for us as a whole.
Right, and if people want to really know how that looks like, go see the movie Crazy Wise and go see the movie Healing Voices by Oryx Cohen, because these are powerful statements about going, like they say, into an altered state instead of having a right, and it can be very learnful.
I think that's a super powerful distinction.
Incredible. And we're gonna break real quick, but I just want to say, like, every single person has an incredible story. So to shut them out from telling their story is a terrible thing. Let everyone share their story, and some people who have mental health conditions, sometimes they have the best stories, I found.
Yeah,
and we all benefit from that.
Yeah, there's one person in the movie Crazy Wise. I forgot his name. Maybe it was Whittaker, but he says, it's not the patients who are psychotic, but we live in a psychotic world, right? And you guys know all about it because you have this guy Trump, and he is spreading fake news every day, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we joke about that, but yeah, I think that's a very good example that we are living in a crazy world and somehow trying to make ourselves okay with it. Somehow making ourselves fit into that craziness and making that craziness okay and normal is very strange to me. We are in a very strange place.
And also trying to change it, though, and also trying to change it for the better to shift people's thinking and to all the negativity to try and find some positivity to change, to lessen that negativity and make more changes. And I think that's what it starts with stuff like language conversations, and it goes on, and there's so much more advocacy you can do, but just a change.
I always say that there is no truth in psychiatry. Maybe there is not even truth in the world. The best thing I could do in my strive to become a good healthcare worker is travel, meet other cultures, read books, study, practice, rehearse, travel, meet other cultures, meet people, talk to them. The best thing I could do to myself is change my convictions every day by going out in the world and talk to people, because what I might think is true today might be total bullshit tomorrow. Back in the days, the theory was that families with high expressed emotion, where the mother was dominant and the father was submissive, that these were perfect circumstances to develop a psychosis. I've told mothers, when I was a young nurse, that they were responsible for the fact that their son became psychotic because of their high expressed emotion, and now we know it's total bullshit. I'm ashamed that I said that to these wonderful mothers who just wanted the best for their kid, and I judged them because they were over concerned. You can never be concerned enough about your kid, and we all know it's total bullshit, and the best we could do is change every conviction we have every day, and learn about new ways to deal with mental illness, because they're out there. You guys are the living proof with your podcast company, right?
Well, I think it's. Thank you very much. And
You're
I think
welcome.
the biggest thing of that we would like to be able to contribute to is continuing the conversation changes like you said, changes convictions every day. So the more we talk about it, the more we explore it, the better we are all for it. So
yeah, that's what I like about the alternatives too. I've been there 3 times, and it gives you ways to change your ideas about ideas you had the day before you came to the conference, because you meet a lot of people. There are about 1,000 of them, and everybody has their own individual perfect way of looking at what happened to them, and their stories are worth listening to.
What Rokus is talking about to our readers is the Alternatives Conference that happens every year in the United States. This year it was in Boston, where me and Rokus met, and he did a great conversation about the Living Museum, and I was so moved by it that I asked him to come on the show, and thus there we are right now.
Yeah. Yay!
All right. Well, here's a pretty good place for us to take a quick break and mention what's going on the two sites. We, as happens when you're having a good conversation here on the podcast here on the Oddball Show, things get moving pretty fast. So it's good to it's good when we realize the time is flowing by. But let's do a quick break, and let's do what's going on at Oddball Magazine and then at JP9 Productions.
Great.
All right, great. So what's going on in Oddball Magazine? Well, Prof, do you want to start with JP Line?
Well, sure. I mean, so we've been on a bit of a hiatus, the end of the summer, and then this first month of the fall. But we're going to be coming back here in October with some brand new content. In the next couple weeks, we have some great contributors, such as LSP is coming back, and we have a couple other people from the Boston art scene that I'm looking to try to get to do recurring columns here at JPL Magazine. For those that don't know, JPL Productions is a Boston hip hop consortium, and JPL Magazine is our online home where you can find all kinds of information about us, our music, some great Boston hip hop artists and other musicians, and then all kinds of other articles. We like to write about sports and politics, art, our collaboration, poetic and other art with Oddball Magazine. So please come check us out and know what we're about. And over the next couple of weeks, we get some new content coming, including a next edition of Welcome to the Swamp, my fictional account of a despotic government located on the coast of Florida. And then a couple other things that we've been working on as far as local artist profiles. In the coming months, we'd like to do a few of those in a row. We have a great Boston hip hop scene that's really explosive right now.
Absolutely.
And so we'll be writing about that a lot in the next couple of weeks. So come check us out at jplimeproductions.com, your home for all things Lime and the online home of JPL Magazine.
And at Oddball Magazine, we have a lot going on, and thanks, Prof, for your update. At Oddball Magazine, which we are poetry, art, and entertainment for the masses, we update every single day. For the last 5 or 6 years, we've kept content going every single day. I'll just start with this week's content. On Monday, we had a comic strip from our friend Bill Harvey called The Odds. It's a one-panel comic strip that just is his take on the modern world. It's called The Odds. Then after that, we had some great artwork by Cesar Valtierra and flash fiction by Robert L. Pennick, which is some beautiful art. Unfortunately, Jag Thought 194, Poem to Hide the Pain I Am Feeling, is about some things that are going on in my family, and a poem to kind of mask the tragedy that is happening within my family, which I don't really want to talk about, but I love my family, and my heart goes out to them. On Tuesday, we had the Epic Autism Review, which is Fleming's Bobrin's weekly column, where he takes something that he's interested in, whether it's Patriots football or video games or whatever he talks about. He's talked some serious conversations and some so not so serious conversations. But he's a great writer, and he wrote this great article on the Rugrats, the show. And it's an adult introspective on a children's show, which is pretty fascinating. Seriously, it's a great read. Then we had artwork by Bill Wallach and a poem by Anam Satar. Anam Satar is a poet from, I don't know, I found her recently. She's a United States poet, great poet. Then we had Ira Joel Haber, whose artwork comes from Brooklyn. He's got some great work with a poem by Robert Joe Stout, who I think is from Mexico City. And then we ended out with James Van Looy and his poem, It's All One Thing. James Van Looy has been an underground Boston poet for the last 20 years, writing very politically charged, wonderful prose that we really enjoy. Then our Liza Zayas, who unearths the Boston art scene one layer at a time, my heart goes out to her and her family in Puerto Rico. She is big into the underground dance scene in Boston and is always trying to promote. And she wrote this really wonderful review on some stuff that's happening this week, actually, this Saturday, tonight. You can go check out the free dance party, Love, Let Us Vibe, with resident DJs Sabbath, HHP, and Mizant at the Milky Way in Jamaica Plain. So you can check that out today. And then finally, we ended with Janet Cormier and Bamboozle No More. So come check us out. We're Oddball Magazine. We are www.oddballmagazine.com. We are poetry, art, and entertainment for the masses. And that's what's going on at Oddball Magazine and JP Line Productions.
Yeah. Well said.
Thanks.
Man, that's a lot of stuff, man. You guys got some great content this week.
So much content, man. I mean, shout out to Chad Parento for doing such a great job as my associate editor. We also, if you go check us out, we revamped the website again to make the art a little bit better to look at. And so much shout outs to Chad. He does such great work. And also, if Bruce Wise is listening, we hope you come back to the site pretty soon. I know Wise Words is on hiatus for a little bit because you're moving. So when you get back, we're ready for your wonderful take on today's political landscape. Yeah. And that's what's going on at Oddball Magazine and JP Line Productions.
So as I mentioned before the break, when we get going to conversation, time tends to fly by. So we're kind of winding down towards the end of the Oddball hour. We'll go a little bit long because, we can do whatever we want. But we do have a couple more topics we wanted to ask Rokus about in the second half. Jason, you want to talk about the Amsterdam project, and then we'll wind down in a few minutes. But so why don't you go ahead, Jason?
Oh, sure. Rokus, so I was on your blog, rokusloopik.com, I think is what it is, right? rokusloopik.com.
Yeah, that's it.
You had a couple interesting talks about the Amsterdam project.
Yeah. And
I asked you before show if that was something you were involved in, and I guess you are very much involved with it. Would you like to talk about the Amsterdam project?
Yeah, sure. It's a program that was on last year on Dutch television, and it was an idea from a very well-known Dutch TV presenter who, by the way, as he says himself, makes scrappy TV shows. He always tells that about himself. And then one day he called me and said, I have this great idea. It's based on a research program done in London where they gave, I think, about 20 people a certain amount of money and telling them that it was their money, they could do whatever they wanted to do with it. And the outcome of what people did with the money was amazing. And so he and a friend made a TV format out of it and called it the Amsterdam Project. And he asked me if I would be willing to be his coach and the coach of 5 people who they, at one moment, were going to offer a bank pass with 10,000 euros on it. And so I had a couple of conversations with this wonderful man. And in the end, I asked him, so Bo, his name is Bo, what assurance can you give me that this is not going to be a tearjerker, this program? And he said to me, well, Rokus, I made so many bullshit on Dutch TV. For once, I want to do something right. And that is when I said, okay, I'm in, I'm going to work with you. And so he created his own production company with his own money, formed a team, a producing team, and they followed 5 homeless individuals in Amsterdam for a couple of months to find out if they would be willing to participate in this TV program and if their stories would be interesting enough for Dutch audience. And after a couple of months, they confronted them with Bo, the TV presenter, and on camera he offered them this bank pass with 10,000 euros on it, and with the message that whatever they wanted to do with the money, they were allowed to do. And these were people with challenges, right? People who were homeless, either living out on the streets or in the shelter system. and we followed them for a year on camera to find out what they would do with the money. And the outcome was amazing because, you know, whatever your thoughts would be on how they would spend the money, they seemed totally wrong. Because, you know, giving a person with a gambling addiction 10,000 euros, that's dangerous, right? But even this guy managed to turn his life around when he got this money, and so it was the same with the other 4 people. They did clever things with the money. So you know, it's like with Housing First. You give a homeless person a home without preconditions, even if they're psychotic or even if they're having a drug addiction or combinations. People, whenever they're offered such a thing, they make the best out of it. You know, they show the world the best they have in them to make it into a success. And with this Money First program, that's how I call it, it was the same outcome. People do clever things when they are offered money, enough money to make their life go into another direction. So, you know, the metaphor is give a person $10 and he will think of his next shot, but give a person $10,000 and he would think about education. He will think about renting a home. He will think about you know, applying for a dog. He would think about applying for a job. You know, you waken healthy parts in people's personalities, and it was very successful. We had 1.2 million viewers, 8 weeks in a row.
Incredible.
There was never a person in Dutch television who would attract so many people to a program about homeless individuals. It was amazing success, and they won prize after prize. And luckily, I was asked by my own hometown, the City Hall, to do the same format here in Haarlem in the coming year. Not on camera, to be quite honest. We're not going to show it on television. Which is good, you know. We'll see what happens without cameras.
So it's just a project unto itself. It's not filmed.
Well, it became like, you know, a regular program.
That's amazing.
To solve poverty, to solve homelessness, to solve. Yeah, right. It's you know, I'm so proud that my hometown has the courage to do it. You know.
Absolutely, that's really amazing.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it's really the point that you just made too was something I was going to ask you that about giving a man $10 versus $10,000. That is really a big difference, right? It's not just the generosity or the charity or whatever. It's something that could an actual opportunity as opposed to just money, you know. And that's
indirectly, you are telling this person, I'm going to give you this house, or I'm going to give you this amount of money, and I trust you 200%. To do the clever thing, right? It makes you. I once interviewed a lady on Housing First in New York, and at the end of the interview she said, and these words stick to my brain until today, it makes you want to do the right thing. And that is what the Amsterdam Project or Housing First or Jobs First do with people, you know. When you cut out all the years that people have to learn how to do a job, by giving them a job directly and train them on the spot, it's more effective. So give them $10,000 and they will do the right thing.
It's the same thing that we were talking about before, responsibility and investment.
Right,
the Living Museum,
it's the same as the Living Museum. So,
right.
And the same thing is implemented in my learning experience, right? Because most people who I take to America had the dream for their whole life to go to America for once in their life. They also knew out of self-stigma they would probably never achieve such a goal. And then this guy Rokus comes by telling them, listen, I found some funds to make you go to New York. And I had a guy, you know, most of the time this trajectory of this trip to America takes about 6 months. So I meet the groups 3 times before we go. I had this guy, Michael, in my group, and within these 3 meetings, he never talked. He didn't say a word. And then we went to New York. We were walking on Times Square, and I asked him, so, why didn't you talk for these whole 3 meetings? And he said, well, Rokus, I heard you talk about this trip, and I was convinced that it was all a lie, that it wasn't true, that you were one of these healthcare workers that made a promise that he was never going to fulfill. Then, he said, I was in this airplane on Schiphol in Amsterdam, sitting to a very overweighted American, and then I knew I'm going to New York.
That's what made it real.
So, what you do with these learning experience or the Living Museum or Housing First or Money First is that you give people a life event that is so overly positive that for a moment, or hopefully for years, you can make them snap out of the trauma and tell them that recovery actually is possible. That is what you do. They're all metaphors for telling people you have everything it takes to become the person you want to be. The only thing is you forgot all about it, and I can help you out with wakening you up.
When you go to the learning experience in traveling groups, do you usually stop at the Living Museum in New York? And
oh yes, always, yeah. Because once you get in there, you're in a totally different world, and once people walk into this place, they know what my trips are all about. It's all about self determination. It's about controlling your own life. It's about healthy ways to deal with mental issues,
Yeah. Hey, Rokus, I have a question. Do they have events at the Living Museum in New York, like poetry events and concerts and stuff?
Oh yes, of course. They have their own band. They work together with the MoMA and other museums in New York. They have exhibitions. Yeah, they're very outgoing. Yeah.
Well, I know I don't know about JP about Prof, but I mean I would love to read my poetry there. I have and I'm sure Prof would love to read. Prof has a great band called Tyler Durden, and we would love to go to that place and play music there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure they'll welcome you like long lost friends.
Well, maybe we can talk after the show about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's just about time to wind down here at the Oddball Hour. It has been an absolutely excellent conversation here with Rokus Loopik, and I would really, really strongly encourage all of our listeners to check out the pertinent link section and check out all these great programs that we're talking about, both in New York, in the Netherlands, and to use it as fodder for different ways to understand mental health conditions and treatment for lack of a better word. Because as we distinguished in this conversation, it's really not treatment.
No,
it's something different entirely.
And, and shift the language that we talk about mental health. And the art that we create is beautiful, and the music we create is beautiful, and the poetry we create is beautiful. And what Rokus does is nothing short of amazing. And Prof, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Boris, one of the founders with Janos of the Living Museum, said is turn your mental illness into your weapon, right?
Ooh, I'm going to remember that forever.
All right, so just before we get out of here, if you're down for it, Rokus, we have a thing called the list of 10, and we'll do that, and then we'll get on out of here.
Okay.
Even though you have no idea what you're in for, are you ready for the list of 10?
Oh, sure, yeah.
List of 10!
So the list of 10 is modeled on James Lipton's Inside the Actor Studio questionnaire, which is modeled on other shows before it. So I like the idea of continuing it on in a different form. Our own list of 10 with Mr. Rokus Loopik. Number 1.
The list of 10!
Number 1. What time and place would you like to be, if not here and now?
I'd like to be in Thailand at sunrise.
Woo-hoo.
Wow, beautiful. I've never had that answer before.
Have you ever been to Thailand?
Oh yeah, last December. It's an amazing place.
I bet. I bet.
Number 2, what is the greatest advice you've ever received?
The greatest advice I ever received. Wow, that is a brain cracker. Yeah, whenever you're being shaved, sit still.
That is very poignant and very wise. One learned from experience. Oh, that's good. All right. Number 3, what would your superpower be?
My superpower is, at last, at 60, I'm able to listen to people 100%.
That's good.
Listen.
Able to listen 100%.
And
Number 4.
Shut up, right?
That's one half of it for sure.
Yeah.
Number 4, Biggie or Tupac?
Tupac.
Woo! I'm a Tupac guy myself, Rokus.
We're strong supporters of both, but I think we're all actually Tupac guys here at the podcast. Number 5, who is your favorite person?
My favorite person is probably my wife, Marianne.
That's nice.
Yeah. It's kind of cliche, but she is.
No, it's usually the right answer. If you've done well.
Yeah.
Number 6, what is your quest?
My quest. Oh wow. Geez, I hate the scenario of life that we're being born and we're going to die one day. I want to be eternal. I don't want to die because it's too much fun. I know it's not going to happen. So if it has to happen, a smooth way.
Excellent. But if possible.
Yeah. Smooth.
I think it's a good quest. Achieving immortality is quite the quest.
It is.
Rokus, you can by what you do while you're here. And after you're gone, people will remember you for it.
I hope so. Yes. Shoot it into to space. This hour program.
There you go.
And our president while we're at it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 7, fill in the blank. All you need is blank.
Love. Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
right.
definitely it.
Probably, we talked about for an hour, but to be quite honest, good mental health care starts with that.
Yeah.
Without that, there won't be recovery.
Without love, there's no recovery.
Yeah.
Without love, there's no recovery.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Number 8, rock, paper, or scissors?
What is that? What is that all about? Rock, paper, or scissors?
Oh my goodness! Is this one that's lost in culture? That's very interesting. So, rock, paper, scissors is a game. Wow, this is really cool. Rock, paper, scissors is a game that is played like similar to flipping a coin, or if you need to have a contest between 2 people, you make 3 symbols with your hand. You go 1, 2, 3, shoot, and the 2 people make the same symbol. One is made for paper, one is for scissors, one is rock, and it's cyclical, so each one beats another one.
And rock is like a fist.
Yeah, rock is a fist. Paper.
I'll do the rock. All right. Power to the people.
Yes, awesome.
Yes, and rock. So rock beats scissors. Scissors cuts paper, and paper wraps rock.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 9. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, geez, I want to be Rod Stewart. I come from like a very stressful background, and what I did to deal with the stress in our home, I would lay on my bed, put on my headphones, and play Rod Stewart Faces records.
Yeah,
and
right on.
Imagine that it wasn't him on stage, but me. That is how I survived, 16 years of stress in our home.
Right on.
Yeah.
Music has a very strong place in our house too, especially cathartic and helpful in that same way.
Yeah.
Music, when it hits you, you feel no pain.
Yes, right. That's it.
And then number 10, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear St. Peter say when you reach the pearly gates?
Oh my God. Maybe I would like to hear the quote of Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. At least I tried, goddammit. At least I did that.
Oh, man, that is a good answer.
Yeah, all right.
At least I tried. Well, thank you very much, Rokus. You have survived the list of 10.
Yes.
The list of 10!
And it has been our absolute pleasure to have you here on the Oddball
Well,
Show.
this was the cream on the cake, guys. Really nice. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it was really such a great honor to have you, Rokus, on the show. And oh man, the work you're doing with the Living Museum is unbelievable. And I hope we can continue this conversation about language and art and everything, and definitely keep in touch after this. And wow, thank you so much.
Well,
Blessed to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I have to hurry because I'm going to a theater play with my youngest son in Amsterdam. So,
Excellent.
I have to get out of the house.
Right on. Well, so does Jason. So thank you very much to Rokus, to Jason, and to all of our listeners. Please check out the pertinent link section to find out more about the Living Museum and about all the work that Rokus Loopik does. And thanks for joining us here on the Oddball Show.
Rokus, thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care,
Rokus.
guys. Bye-bye.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Okay, Prof, looks like we had a great show,